Good evening, my foreign friends. I am Lino. I am an ordinary young person living in a first-tier city in China. I enjoy using a VPN to explore the outside world and share my thoughts. If you are interested in topics related to China, please subscribe to this channel. I don't want to cause myself any trouble, so please forgive me for using AI voice and cartoon visuals. Recently, I saw a joke spreading among young people in China. It goes like this. These days, anyone who is ambitious and tries to do something is already in debt. If you start a business, you'll discover how much money you can owe. If you buy a house, you'll discover how much money you can owe. First, it sounds like a joke. But in China, many jokes are actually disguised social commentary. Because behind this joke is something very real. A dramatic shift in the Chinese economy and the mentality of an entire generation. If you go back about 10 or 15 years, the atmosphere in China was completely different. Back then, everyone was obsessed with one question. How do we make money? Everywhere you went, people were discussing opportunities. How to start a business. How to invest. How to flip apartments. China felt like a giant construction site. Cities were expanding, highways were being built, skyscrapers appeared almost overnight, and people believed the future would always be bigger and richer than the present. Risk wasn't scary. Risk was exciting. Borrowing money wasn't dangerous. Borrowing money was smart. If you borrowed money to buy an apartment, the price would double in a few years. If you borrowed money to start a business, the market would grow and reward you. Debt wasn't a burden. Debt was a ladder to success. And millions of people actually got rich that way. So an entire generation grew up believing one thing. If you're bold enough, the system will reward you. But today the mood has changed. A lot. Now young people in China often say something very different. They say the fastest way to discover your financial limits isn't trying to make money. It's trying to be ambitious. Because ambition today often leads directly to debt. Start a business? You might burn through your savings in a year. Open a restaurant? Half the restaurants on your street might close within 12 months. More than half of the shops on the pedestrian street across from my home have closed down, which is truly shocking. And then there's the biggest financial decision most Chinese people will ever make. Buying a house. For many years, Chinese society treated housing like a guaranteed investment. Parents pressured their children to buy as early as possible. Banks were eager to lend. Developers kept building entire cities. Housing prices kept rising, and rising, and rising. In some major cities, apartment prices increased 5 or 10 times within a decade. People who bought early became rich without doing anything. But when something only goes up for a long time, people start believing it will always go up. That belief shaped the life decisions of millions of Chinese families. But now the situation looks very different. Housing prices in many places have stopped rising. In some cities, they are falling. Developers are struggling. Some have collapsed under massive debt. And suddenly many young people are realizing something uncomfortable. Buying a house doesn't mean becoming rich. It might mean locking yourself into 30 years of payments. Imagine spending most of your income for decades on a single apartment. And then imagine the value of that apartment not increasing. That's a very different story from the dream people were told for years. And this is where that joke comes from. If you want to know how much money you can owe, just try starting a business. If you want to know how much money you can owe, just try buying a house. It's funny, but it's also a sign that something fundamental has changed. Because 10 years ago, ambition meant opportunity. Today, ambition sometimes means financial risk. And here's something interesting. Many Western viewers might watch this and say, wait, that sounds familiar. Because debt isn't unique to China. Student debt, mortgage debt, credit card debt, Many Western countries also live with large amounts of debt. But the psychological story is different. In China, an entire generation grew up during an economic miracle. Their parents experienced unbelievable upward mobility. Farmers moved to cities. Workers became business owners. Property prices exploded. Everything seemed to move in one direction, upward. So people assumed that upward movement would continue forever. But economies don't grow in a straight line forever. And when that momentum slows down, the psychological shock can be huge, especially for young people, because they were raised with one message: work hard, take risks, and your life will improve. But today, many young people are quietly asking a different question. What if that promise is no longer true? You can see this shift in many social trends in China. Young people talking about lying flat. Some people delaying marriage. Others refusing to have children. Many trying desperately to find stable government jobs instead of chasing entrepreneurial dreams. The dream of getting rich quickly is fading. The new dream is much simpler. Stability, security, a predictable life. And maybe this is why Chinese internet culture has become so sarcastic. Because when people feel uncertain about the future, humor becomes a coping mechanism. A short joke can express a complicated reality, sometimes better than a long political speech. That's why this sentence became popular. If you want to know how much money you can owe, just try being ambitious. It's a joke about debt. But it's also a quiet comment about something bigger. A society transitioning from explosive growth to something slower. From optimism to caution. And maybe the most interesting question is this: what happens to a generation when the economic story they grew up believing starts to change? Because economic growth isn't just numbers. It's belief. It's confidence. It's the expectation that tomorrow will be better than today. And when that expectation weakens, the entire mood of society changes. People spend less. They take fewer risks. They become more careful about the future. And sometimes the only safe way to talk about that change is through a joke. So when Chinese young people say, "If you start a business, you'll discover how much money you can owe. If you buy a house, you'll discover how much money you can owe," they're not just laughing at debt. They're laughing at the end of an era. And maybe that's the real story behind the humor. Thank you for watching. See you next time.